What's up, guys? Ben here, bringing you another video. Today is Wednesday morning. I know I normally do my tier list videos earlier in the week, but I want to take a couple days to reflect on this one. So I got that what's hitting your channel today here in this video. We're going to talk about it. We're in an inflection point in this season where I think some teams are trending up, some teams are trending down, and we're getting the business end of the year where form is important going into champs. And a couple of these teams are on the cusp of either rebounding or really sinking to the lowest low of the season. And we're getting to a point where I don't know if roster changes are going to fix some of these issues. So let's see how we rank some teams. It could be an interesting tier list today. Let's dive in. All right, so if you are new here, I don't do the letter thingamabob. I find that stupid. But anyway, we start off with finals bound. This is basically your top two teams, and I think you could take a guess who it's going to be pretty much every week until probably after the major. Sunday regulars is going to be your other top three, top four teams. Again, I don't think it's too much of a surprise who's in it this one at this point, but these other two teams are clearly not as good as the two teams above them. Making progress is the rest of your top six teams. I have not put anybody in this category last week, but I do expect to maybe move a team or two up here. We'll talk about it. Work to do is going to be your top 8, top like 10-ish teams. It sort of fluctuates. The teams I think aren't rock bottom have a severe weakness in their game, but I think they can maybe work on it. They're sort of trending upwards, maybe teetering, and they haven't quite hit rock bottom yet, so they're kind of in this limbo area. And then missing piece as well, it's everybody that sucks. And you see right now we had 6 teams because after the major and the last week, I was like, with a lot of these bottom 6 teams, I think a couple of them are moving up or down here. So we're going to talk about it at the end of this video. But let's start at the top. We'll start with FaZe and Optic, who are going to occupy our top 2 positions. And, you know, I don't need to spend too much time, I think, on this one. FaZe right now in cruise control after the major. They have not lost now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 series in a row. And actually, if you count all of, since the major one final, they've only lost 2 series out of, they are 12-2 in the last 14. So FaZe has been in cruise control, and the only losses to New York, which I think really helped improve their S&D game after that. They've been kind of really good search since then. And the LG one, which was, I don't know what that was. Every other series since then, they've been pretty good. They actually haven't gone to game 5 since the LG series. Actually, I take that back. They have gone to game 5 twice in the beginning of the major, but they clutched up those ones. So either way, FaZe has been good. They played great against Optic the week prior, and then this week or last week, they had one match against Toronto, and they absolutely slammed them bad. FaZe are looking pretty good on the new maps. They're looking like the best Rio team. Map pool's looking great. They have a big match against New York this week, I think for New York, or so for FaZe. And then kind of after this, it really opens up with 3 winnable matches. So I think FaZe is probably going 6 or 1 or 5 or 2 here. And gonna be a top seed. And so is Optic. I mean, after the FaZe loss, they've been in absolute cruise control against Seattle and Vegas, and they have a very easy split. Miami, Boston, LAG, Thieves, they're gonna be 6-1. I think Thieves are probably the hardest remaining team that they play, and I could see Thieves giving them maybe a little bit of trouble if they start to kind of round into form, because I think Thieves are a very easy split, and we'll get to that later in this video. But Optic also in cruise control, and them and FaZe are really on a collision course, I think, again on Sunday. At champs, or maybe earlier than, or sorry, not champs, in major 3, maybe earlier that, depending on the bracket works out. But these two teams are grand finalists right now. I don't really see another team being in that conversation. I'm not going to hear any other argument. It's FaZe and Optic right now are a major 3 grand finalists. Now, these next 2 teams, for a number of reasons, are still top 4 teams, but are starting to slide, and for different reasons. So let's talk about it. We're going to start with the New York Subliners, who I would say, as far as the season goes, have had 2 rock bottom moments. Rock bottom 1 was the dead last, I don't know what happened on Thursday, Friday at Major 1. The next one was whatever last week was, because they lost the game 5 to Carolina, and like, okay, Gwyn kind of went crazy in that series, hard carried them, whatever, even though New York lost like a high-rise S&D and just weird stuff. But the Seattle loss to me was unbelievably unacceptable for New York. Like, how are you losing the response to a Seattle team that, I think they're improving. They're starting to play better, but the maps weren't really close in any of the 3 respawns. They lost by 100 points in that Karachi hardpoint, and they lost by 50 plus in the Vista hardpoint. I'm very concerned for this New York team that you look at respawn, and as maps have started to be removed from the pool, maps that they have been good at all year, like, Skid Row hardpoint, Invasion hardpoint, that they are not willing and not getting good at some of the new maps other than Rio. I think this team needs to put in a lot of work this week, and I hope they have, to be a good 6-star and Vista team, or the paths forward against them for some of these teams are very difficult. You end up playing sub base, you end up playing Karachi. When you play these older maps in the pool, teams have had months and months of reps on it, and it's more likely you're going to lose. So there's that. And also New York's S&D has been very poor during this split, and that's been a strong suit for them pretty much every split except for this one. But I don't know what's going on with the New York camp. I know their respawn's not always the most efficient. I know everybody's talked about that death on streams and podcasts, but New York has a big match coming up this week against FaZe that they need to clutch up. And if they lose that one, I still think they're going to make winners bracket, but I think they'd end up as a bottom seed and start to drop a lot of points and really put themselves in that fourth spot conversation for champ seeding, which is not always the best spot to be in. So we'll see, man. It's a big moment for New York. Do they step up? They already beat FaZe last split. Can they do it again this split, or are we going to continue to see New York be on a slide going to 3 games if they lose them? And then Toronto. So this one, okay, let's take a look here. I'm gonna hop over. We're gonna go to the breaking point here, and I want to show you kind of the slide for New York. So, or slide for Toronto rather. So stage 1, we take a look at overall stats. And you see that it's very clean here, right? Everybody above a 1 KD, Insight 113, Scrap a 115. You see the respawn numbers, fantastic. S&D numbers, fantastic. Control, whatever. But you start to see as we go on here to Major 2, last split, not good overall. Scrap obviously continued to do his thing, but everybody else kind of sliding down. Envoy, you know, hardpoint's been a problem for him all split, and they were in general pretty good at hardpoint. But you see the S&D very poor across the board from virtually everybody. And then Control, Jamie had a real hard time with a 0.78 in the game mode, and they definitely got them in trouble on a lot of different Control maps against top teams. Now we go to Major 3, and you know, the Control has been a little bit better. They've kind of played great in the game mode, other than that evasion Control they played against FaZe. But the two problems now are Envoy is continuing to head on a downward path, and hardpoint and Insight's 1.15s that he was dropping on Skid Row have kind of dissipated now. And then the S&Ds, they've continued to be really poor, even though Envoy has actually stepped it up in this game mode. I just think, you know, for Toronto, you know, teams go through rough patches with game modes, right? Like we've seen, you know, in particular, I'm going to talk about Search for this, but if we want to give examples, you know, I don't think Optic was playing the best S&D to begin the year. They didn't really figure it out until the middle end of the stage, really until January. FaZe had definitely an S&D dip during stage 2. And they figured it out during the stage, and now they're back to being like the best S&D team in the game. But what's very concerning for me, if you are a Toronto fan, is you take all of stage 2 and stage 3 so far, this team is 7-9 S&D. And I just don't think if you want to be a top team in this game that you can be a sub 500 search team, because then what happens is what happened against FaZe, where you lose that map 1 on a new map and you go to Rio S&D and you get run over, and now you're down 0-2, the team that just won the last event. You head to their best mode, game mode in Control, and it's wraps at that point. This Toronto team has got to figure out this S&D map pull issue, and this slide has really happened, you know, post removal of Skid Row, because I think that they haven't really figured out what their bread and butter map is searching since then. You know, they've had some mixed to bad results on Rio S&D. The Karachis have been good, but if you're FaZe, you know, you're not really going to play them on that map. Invasion S&D has been very good, but again, that one can be kind of mixy, and you know, we've seen top teams able to kind of grind that one out, and their high rise has been terrible. So 6 star to me is the obvious map for Toronto to find some form in. We want to figure out how to attack the map pool here. But yeah, it's been tough sledding for Toronto, and they're sort of now in their lowest point, I think, in the season, because they have played since the middle of stage 2. Played FaZe twice, 0-2. Played Optic twice, 0-2, and played New York once, and 0-1. They have not beaten any of the other top 4 teams the last 5 times that they played them. The next top 4 team they're going to play is New York, and that's at the end of the stage. And until then, they've got a Carolina team coming up this week. It's looking a little dangerous. So if I am Toronto, we got to lock in, because if Carolina comes in, they take a search, you know, Rio Hardpoint, some of these other maps for Carolina, they've looked solid in. You don't want to go to game 5 with this Carolina team, because they're going to have a good chance. So a big way for Toronto to get that confidence back. And then from there, you know, you've got Boston, you have Rocker and Boston, which are W's, and then you're 4-1, 5-1 going into New York, and you're really good in a top seed. But you lose this one, and suddenly you're 2-2. And again, you're the same problem as New York is. You end up being 3-4 or 4-3 at that point. So we'll see what Toronto can do. But neither one of these teams to me is in the league of FaZe or Optic. Okay, so there are 2 teams I'm going to move up to making progress right now. The first team for me is the Los Angeles Thieves, who I think, kind of navigated their tough split last stage in a decent way. That loss to LAG was not particularly good at the major, and that kind of killed their land placing. But online, they've been really good. They've had a couple of gritty game fives so far this split against Vegas and Miami, but there's remaining schedule with Carolina, Rocker, Boston, Seattle, and Optic. Like, Thieves are in a position to really kind of run the tail for the most part up to Optic. And I'm feeling confident enough in Thieves that I feel like they are in the top 6 conversation. And I'll just say for spoilers, the other team I'm putting there is Carolina. They actually play each other this week. So I'm excited for that. I'm excited. It's our first match on Friday to see where both of these teams are at. Carolina's on a good run. We'll get to them in a second. But for Thieves, they got that and Rocker. They can go 2-0 this week if they play the cards right. Running 1 won't be too bad. But I feel like right now, where their respawn is at, and the S&D actually looks pretty good with Joe. I was very worried with Joe coming in. The search would struggle. And the only kind of fumbles that we've seen in S&D from them in this split was that 6-star round 11, against Miami that they lost in their last series. Other than that, like, I thought the new maps they looked pretty good at, and then Evasion Search they played against Miami was good. So I like where Thieves is at. Big week though. Let's see if they disappoint me by putting them in the spot. All right, and the other team is Carolina, and they've been on a nice run here since they have moved to Carolina. And if we count the lane, they're like 4-2 in their last 6, so that's a pretty good run here. Now, that being said, we are heading to the point in the schedule where we're going to find out if this Carolina team is good or not. They just beat New York, so I'll tip that. They got Thieves, we just talked about, then Toronto FaZe, and then Rocker. So I can see a world where Carolina beats Thieves, and they lose the next 2, and they lose Rocker, and now we're like, I don't know, 500-ish, like maybe they're good, maybe they're not, but maybe that's what we need for a top 6 team. Maybe none of them are really going to go on a run. I think this Carolina team is gritty. I think the sub-base strengths really give a map that, like a top team has to think about not playing them on. I still am concerned, though, that the slaying power on this team kind of isn't very good. And against the bottom teams, they kind of are more disciplined. But when they play a FaZe, Optic, or New York or Toronto, they're just going to get waxed again. So we'll see with Carolina. But right now, they've gritted it and they grinded it. And that series against New York, I thought, they got kind of hard carried by Gwyn, which I, tipped, but they played a really clean last map too. So that's a whole team effort. So let's see what Carolina can do with their schedule this week. And again, like, don't disappoint me by moving you up to making progress, because I don't want to look like a dumbass. All right, so next team we're going to talk about is Vegas, and I'm also going to move Seattle off the bottom here as well. I'm going to leave the bottom 4 kind of as is with those 4 teams. We'll get to them in a second as to why I think all of them I can't really move up right now, but we're going to start with Vegas. Made that move to call up Asim after he got dropped from Boston, and they got slammed by Optic. Respectfully slammed by Optic. I don't really know how to rank this Vegas team right now because that series is so weird, so bizarre. I don't know if they're good still. I don't know if that was just an off day, and they have a very tricky remaining schedule amongst a lot of teams sort of on the bubble. They only have 1 match this week. It's against Seattle, so it's very winnable. Just like with the Thieves Carolina one, tier on tier kind of violence going on here. But once you get past that, they've got FaZe, New York, Boston as the remaining 3. FaZe is obviously an L, an undisputed L. New York obviously depends on form, but should also be an L. And then Boston, they should be, but who knows? So I don't know for Vegas. They got 1. They're 1-2 right now. The Seattle one I think is big. They need to win this because otherwise they're going to be barely an opportunity to make winners bracket. A lot of concerns I have right now about Vegas after watching the last series. So now a team that's actually surprised me is Seattle, and that New York victory was very, very impressive. They also beat Carolina this split, and we talked about how good Carolina have been online. And then even against Optic, like, they grinded pretty good in that series. I think Seattle is starting to really figure out how they want to play, and I really want to tip kind of 2 people for I think really stepping up as of late. Brezi's been by far and away their best player this stage, so we need to tip him after a terrible second stage, and I'm chalking maybe that some of that up to residuals from whatever happened after Major 1, plus moving to a new country, all that stuff. He's played great this split. I think the role changes helped, and 04 has come in and I think showed some really good contribution, although the S&D has been okay the last 2 series. They've lost close ones to Optic and in New York, who are pretty good search teams, but they look good against Carolina, who I think have been as well. So I'm curious to see if Seattle can keep this going. We talked about the Vegas thing on Sunday. They also next week and beyond have Miami, Thieves, and FaZe coming up. So I could see a world where Seattle, if they play their cards right, have 4 or 5 wins to split online, which would be huge for the online qualification. They need them. So let's see what Seattle can do. The Respawn, they look like a team that when you play 6-star in Vista, they're going to be solid on those maps. So let's see if teams attack their map pool, try and play them on, maybe a map like Subbase. Seattle don't play Rio, or haven't played Rio at all this split. They only played it twice last split. So we'll see if maybe that's an attack vector for some teams if it makes it into series. But I like what I've seen from Seattle so far. Let's see if they can keep it up. That's really the theme for all of these 4 teams I put above the bottom 4. Is like, is the top 4 staying as is? Or is Miami, LAG, Boston, Miami going to shuffle things up here? All right, so let me do this backwards. Let me try to order by teams I think are at the bottom. And LAG to me is bottom now. They did make a roster change this week after this last weekend with Flames finally coming in for Adam Assault. We've been crying for that roster move for like 2 months now. And they finally have made it because they have hit ultra mega reverse rock bottom this split. They have not won a map in any of the 3 series that they have played. The S&D has been very poor. We already know they're a bad Respawn team. They need to do something. There's not really much to talk about with this LG team. They're playing bad. They are not good, and they got to get one on the board as far as maps going. So I expect it to be a losers bracket team, but they're always a difficult out once we get to land. It seems like these days. Rocker, Boston, Optic, and Miami though. Opportunities here with the new team balance. Rocker, Boston, Miami, You get 3 of those, you're in winners bracket. Never know. But for LG right now, they have to be rock bottom, unfortunately. Next up, I am going to put Boston Breach as the 11th best team. Only played 2 series so far. So that's kind of factoring into some of this. They have gone to game 5 in both the series that they have played so far this split, but I think the way they lost the Minnesota series this week is my biggest issue with Boston. They are a scrimmy 8 team, and because of the lack of discipline, they're going to throw away series and maps like they did last weekend where they should win. And so until they improve that, they are going to be just scamming in every series that they play. Pentagram has come in and unfortunately for me not looked very good in the stint, and the S&D, which has been a problem for them all season, has continued to be a problem in the split, even though the control has been very good and the hardpoint's been decent. The S&D has been kind of the issue. So let's see if they can improve on that. Now, Boston have 1 series this week. It is against LAG. But then after that, it gets real tough. Like, this is a must-win match for Boston because they got Optic, L. Thieves, really don't see it against Thieves. Toronto, L, and then Vegas. You see my point here. You win against LAG. You see how things play out. And maybe you can win that Vegas one to get the 8th seed. But more likely this Boston team starting to lose the bracket. And then we'll see what happens. And, for a team that has been very poor at land with back-to-back 12th placings, it might be another one for this Boston organization. They might have another bad stage. I just don't see it with this team right now. All right, and the last 2 teams here are Minnesota and Miami, and they're both just like equally mediocre. So I don't really know like how to rank either of them. Like Miami looked good against Boston, but then last week against Thieves, they grinded out that series and they look like they've started to find a couple of really decent maps. In the pool. I thought the Rio Hardpoint especially was the cleanest Rio that we've seen them play since the map got added. And they looked pretty good in the 6-star search with the teamwork. They lost an Invasion, S&D, and that's kind of the MO for this team. I just I don't think the map pool is really deep enough to make runs in series like that. And I'm concerned that unfortunately through this split so far that Miami's control has been extremely poor. They are 2-10 in their last 12 controls. So that is a huge spot of weakness if you cannot win the swing game mode. And to highlight how momentum based is, I'm going to give you 2 stats. If they win game 2 in a series, they are 8-2. They lose game 2, they are 0-11. So they lose game 2, right now automatic L. In control, if they win, 6-2. They lose 2-11. So map 2 and map 3s is where this team is getting caught, and the momentum based issues or something that they need to work on as a squad. Now, the rest of this split is, well, you know what? I'll say this. There's opportunities if they They grind here because let me kind of lay it off on you on this one. So this week they're going to play Optic Texas. That's an L. But the next 2 weeks they have New York, who we talked about at the beginning of this video. There's opportunity there. Seattle, who look improved, but never know. And then LAG, who again, not that good. So if somehow you're Miami and you get like 2 more victories this remaining schedule, you're gonna win his bracket. You never know. And try and finally win a map on that. But I think the most likely path for Miami is they're probably gonna be like 2 and 5, and then we'll see who the loser bracket draws. So this week's kind of a chalk it up week for Miami. I just don't look. I know they've beaten Optic in the past, but Optic also slammed the last 2 times they played them. But after that, some opportunity for Miami. We'll see what they can do. Now, Minnesota Rocker to me are the biggest unknown team on this entire list. And why I'm putting them in this spot right now in front of Miami, Boston, and LAG. First, because they beat Boston like last weekend. And they'd gotten past the FaZe New York Blender as a new team. And I think like kind of where I see Rocker right now as a squad is that the S&D looks very, very decent. The control looks very, very poor. In the respawn, I want to see more respawn maps against decent teams because on the new maps, they tried them out against FaZe and Optic and it didn't go particularly well. That Karachi hardpoint they played against Boston, I thought was very good. So we'll see with more time with the Rocker team. I just don't know what to think about them yet because we're really getting to the meat of their schedule. We're going to find out if this team sucks or if this team's actually like low-key decent. They start off against LAG, which is a must-win match. And then they will play LA Thieves on Saturday. So I can see a world where Minnesota go 2-0. They can also go 1-1 this week, which would not be too bad. You've got Toronto and Carolina the week after that. So if they somehow find 2 victories this week, they're in winner's bracket. And you can see what you get seeding-wise going in that last week. If you go 1-1, you've got Toronto and Carolina. They're going to have to win one of those to make winner's bracket probably. So don't know what you know yet about this Minnesota team. They might suck. They might be decent. They might be mediocre. They're the biggest unknown in this because of their matchup so far. And I'm excited to see what the next 4 matches have in store for them. So yeah, a longer tier list video than usual, but I think there was a lot to say about this situation. And we've kind of settled into this. I think the top 4 pretty set and far of how I'm doing their split right now. The middle 4, I don't really feel confident in. And the bottom 4, I feel confident in for now. But the bottom 8, it kind of shuffled a lot. So who knows what's going to happen next week. So let me know what you guys think of the video. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more. And as always, guys, we'll see you on the next one.